So welcome everybody. This morning we're going to do a session on ethics. So my name is Kerry Morrison and I've been interested in ethics for a while. And what we're going to be talking about is, as practitioners and creative producers and organisations working within and with communities, where do we stand when it comes to ethics, both human and environmental? So as a quick introduction to myself, I'm what I call a socio-environmental artist, and I've been working with environmental issues and with people for many, many years now. And often as an artist, I find myself in situations, that's almost like a full stop, but I find myself in situations where I've been questioning the ethics of practice, and how we're actually working with people, and wondering why some organisations don't have a code of ethics and don't discuss ethics, and also where that leaves the artist as well. So, you know, the ethics when it comes to working with artists. And through my kind of interest in ethics, I started diving into sort of the subject. I'm not a philosopher and I've never studied ethics. It's just something I became curious about. And quite some time ago, I was asked by Social Works to an interview to talk about my practice, and of all the people they spoke to, they found that I was about the only person brought ethics up at all. So I was asked to write a chapter for a book, which was this book, Social Works, around ethics. And since then, you know, I've found that there's been more interest in it, and I've been invited to discuss ethics with different people, and Co-Creating Change asked me to do a series of forums around ethics. In 2010, I hooked up with a couple of other people and formed In Situ. So In Situ is an embedded organisation, arts organisation, initially artist-led, that is based in Briarfield, which is in Pendle, which is in the far east of Lancashire. And through the work with In Situ, we were working with the people in the area and doing very embedded practice. And we started to talk about the ethics of our practice within In Situ as well. And in the end, we started to think, okay, well, maybe we should have a code of ethics. And interestingly, so we were three people initially: myself, William Titley, and Paul Hartley. And Paul Hartley trained as a community and youth worker, so his background was slightly different, and he had a, you know, sort of, I guess, more of awareness around ethics, because that's, you know, something that was part of his practice anyway. So it was something that was kind of like in our heads. I'm no longer with In Situ because I relocated to Scotland in 2018. So I left In Situ in 2018 when In Situ became an NPO. Before leaving, we did write a code of ethics. I now sit on the board of In Situ, and I still work occasionally as an artist for In Situ as well. So what is ethics? I don't want to go into a long talk about what ethics is, but in a nutshell, and very much a nutshell, ethics is to do good and to do no harm. And I think those are really interesting when you put them together. So when you think about doing good, you also think about, is the good that you think that you're doing any harm to anyone else? And we can go back in time for that and look at, like, you know, how missionaries worked. And of course, we now know that that was actually a harmful thing to do. So it is about these two things, to do good and to do no harm. So kind of having to look around that. Ethics can often be sort of confused with ethos and morals, and that's kind of like a really slippy area, the difference between ethos, morals, and ethics. So just to give a little bit of a breakdown on this, so ethics is an agreed code by which to practice and abide. It's almost like a set of rules. So it's a set of rules that people sort of agree to and will then work to. And an ethos is more like, you know, a way of working. So I know of many organisations that will have a working ethos, and this tends to be about our attitudes, our ways of working, our aspirations, and also our character, either whether it's an individual character or the character of the organisation. So an ethos is kind of like a guide, as opposed to like the set of rules to which you're going to work to. And morals are kind of personal. and they're sort of personal and societal informed. So our morals are informed by our upbringing, by our culture, by our belief systems, and by the laws of the land that we live in. So those inform our morals, and our morals often inform our ethics. However, we may have different morals depending on our culture and our upbringing. So when it comes to ethics, it's sort of looking at the morals of all of those that are involved in the discussion and where we find that common ground of ethics to which we can all abide. So again, going back to the idea that the ethics is almost like a rule book, if you like, that we say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we feel, what we feel is ethical. I remember some time ago having a conversation with somebody or with a group of people about ethics, and one person said about their practice, well, of course my practice is ethical because I'm an ethical person. But what intrigued me about that is they had a belief that they were ethical, but I had no understanding as to what that meant. And it's kind of like, we might think we're ethical, but what does that mean to somebody else? So as an organization, if we say we're practicing ethically, perhaps we could have that written down so others could actually see that. I'd like to do a quick poll because obviously, I can't see you. I don't know exactly who's in the room, but I'm wondering if you could answer the poll. So Tom, who's sitting in the background backstage, could you put the poll up, please? It's a yes/no answer, and it is: do you, your organisation, practice to a written code of ethics? Okay, that looks like there's no more votes coming in. Looks like we have 5 votes, and 4 of those votes on the poll are saying that they don't practice to a code of ethics, and so we've only had 5 people put input into this, and 1 is saying that they do, and I actually voted, so I might well be the one that has said yes to that. Okay, so that's helpful. Thank you. So it looks like a few of you don't actually have a code of ethics by which you're practicing. So I think I've sort of mentioned a little bit as to why we decided we were going to have, at in situ, why we decided we were going to have a code of ethics. There were a few things. We were working with people, and we did feel that it would be helpful for us and for those who are working with us and for those people we work with to understand how we practice. So we thought that would be useful, but also, like I said, my work is social environment, so I work with environment, and for me it was also really, really important that we had an environmental code of ethics, because there were certain things in my personal life that I was or was not doing, and I wanted this to be kind of adopted into the organisation as well. So I was very aware of the issues around palm oil, and not wanting to have any products with palm oil in the organisation. So no biscuits or shampoos or anything like that in the organisation that were using palm oil, because of the impact and the habitat destruction that happens with palm plantations, and also things like trying to reduce plastic, making sure that we're not bringing into materials that are causing any impact or harm on the environment. So we actually did quite a rounded. I felt that it was quite a rounded kind of a case for environmental ethics. So what does go into a code of environmental ethics? I'm now going to see if I can actually share my screen, because what I'm going to do is actually share in situ's code of ethics with you. So I've now taken you to the in situ's code of ethics, and interestingly, from in situ's homepage, this is actually the most visited page on the website, and I feel that is an indication that people are curious as to know about how we practice ethically and what we think ethical is or might be. And as an organisation, in situ does actually revisit the code of ethics. It's not a static document. Things change all the time. New things come to light, things that we want to be thinking about, that we might want to add to our code of ethics, or things might happen whereby we want to change something in our code of ethics or remove something. So we started off very simply with human ethics, and we got this through, I'm pretty sure we got this through just doing internet searches on human ethics. I know that I visited a lot of university websites to find out more about how, their codes of ethics, because they do have codes of ethics. And for any work that you do at a university as a researcher, if you're working with people or environment, your work has to pass an ethics approval, and without the ethics approval, you can't go ahead and do that work. So our human ethics is probably quite overarching and quite broad, and that's fine. And this is probably things that you already do and already take into account. So, for example, treating all people with respect and consideration, respect the rights to freedom of opinion, expression, and dissent, encourage and support mutual understanding and cooperation, promote an environment supportive of human dignity, bodily health, and spiritual well-being, adopt working methods that safeguard human rights and community well-being, promote meaningful participation from all interested parties, encouraging active participation as equal beneficiaries, honour and support young people, enabling them to fulfil their essential role in creating sustainable societies for the future. And I can actually say that when I wrote the Code of Ethics, it's shifted since then. So things have been put in. In situ is now working more with young people than it was when I was part of the team. So the last point has been added to the human ethics. From human ethics, we went to environmental ethics. I'm going to just quite quickly slip over this one, because I'd like us to come back to it, actually. We then also have something around ethical arts practice. What we feel is an ethical arts practice, what we have agreed is an ethical arts practice. So these are our guiding principles: to operate with honesty and integrity in all of our work, be open and transparent in our decision making, ensure that community expectations are not falsely raised. I'm going to pause on that one a minute, because what I found as a practitioner, so this was before 2010 and before co-founding In Situ, what I found as a practitioner was that I was often invited to go and work in a community. Sometimes my approach is socially engaged, I should say, and sometimes those communities were in areas of multiple deprivation, asked to go in and to do some good, if you like. And in that process, it was almost like the artist was expected to do something that would make a difference, which is problematic in itself. But in doing that, in going through that process, people's expectations can be raised. And they can be raised because they could think that something good is going to happen. Something's going to happen that's going to change some of the cruddy things that might be going on, and they get quite excited and invested in being involved in something that's going to bring about change. What also happens is so many of us are constricted by funding, and when the funding ends, what happens then? So the artist will no longer be receiving funding. Their commission will have come to an end. And the organisation moves onto another project. The artist leaves that community, and the community are then left. So they've had they're left whether the project has worked or not worked. And often I've discovered from working in this way for a long period of time, it takes months to build up trust with people. So a 3-month project, I would say, is pretty well. If working with a community for 3 months, you just start to know them. Working with a community for 6 months, you start to know them a lot better, and people start to open up. If a commission is only 6 months and you reach the stage where people are opening up and coming up with ideas, and your commission ends and you leave, then they are left with that not being taken forward. So this thing about not falsely raising community expectations, I think, is really important. And by not doing, if you do that, if you do falsely raise them, we as an organisation, as In Situ, consider that to be unethical. The next point on this one is provide timely information on matters, activities and development plans that come to our attention that our local community are like to have an interest in, or that will affect them. So again, as an organisation, so this is something that's kind of been moved and added into the ethical arts practice since we were practicing. So this is something we discovered as our organisation became bigger, that we became privy to certain things that were happening. So the council might say, "Oh, we're looking at repurposing this park," or "we're thinking of having a town development scheme," and we would find that we would then be hearing things that would be affecting the communities where we live and work. So we feel that it's important that we pass that information on, so that people are aware of what's being discussed for that, within the environment which they live. So we also ensure that our work process and processes are non-didactic, so we're not telling people what to do. Not undertake work that may harm people or the environment, or any work created for the landscape will be produced in accordance with our environmental ethics, and use collaborative problem solving to manage and resolve environmental or social conflicts or other disputes. Because we in situ take a socially engaged approach, we also have an ethical arts engagement section. So in any given project, there will be participants and people engaged throughout the project process. A participant is an individual or a collective or an organisation actively involved in the process of creating artwork or generating outcomes connected to the process undertaken. And the team members of in situ can be and often are also participants. So what we're trying to do there is create, if you like, almost like a flat system. So trying not to be hierarchical with that and understanding that we are all participating in the same thing. However, a participant is different from someone who engages through the process of the project. People who are engaged are not necessarily involved in the proactive process of creating and delivering work. Once they become proactively involved, they become a participant. So we've noticed that there's a difference in how people engage or participate in projects. And then we go on to participation. So we pull this out more. So participants will not be coerced to participate. This is something, again, picked up from studying universities' websites on ethics. So you're not supposed to coerce people into doing something. Their participation will also always be voluntary, and they may withdraw at any time. They should understand that their views and opinions could be used as anecdotal information. This is if they're participating in the development of the whole project. They will be acknowledged as co-creators unless they wish to be anonymous. If they choose to be anonymous, anonymity will be respected and guaranteed. They will be asked to give consent for any drawings or photographs of them to be used in representing and promoting the project. Again, this is something I found when I was working prior to in situ. I might be out and about taking photographs. Any artist might be out and about taking photographs of their work, of people interacting with the work. Organisations like to take photographs of people interacting with the artist. Those photographs might go up onto a website without the consent of the individual. And the individual might be somewhere where they don't want to be seen. So they might have taken time out of work because they just needed some space, but they hadn't necessarily told their employer. They might be meeting somebody that they don't want other people to know that they're meeting, and so on and so forth. So to actually just take a photograph of somebody and put it up on your website in a public domain, again, it was something that we felt should not be done unless that person who we have photographed has given us consent to do that. And likewise, if people are involved in projects and they do drawings or any artwork or any writing, anything whatsoever, if they have a creative output whilst doing, in a collective workshop, then it's understanding that that artwork is actually theirs. And if we want to use that on the website or anywhere else, we ask for consent to use it. We ask that people will allow us to use that, and also we credit them for that as well. So they would be credited unless they want to be anonymous. Any views and opinions gathered will be held securely and will not be available outside of the project unless they become an integral part of the artwork. So we might hear things that people say about the situation that they're living in, or people that they know, or certain things that might be gathered or might be recorded. because the session might be recorded. So this is not information that is public, this is private information, unless the project evolves in a way that some of those discussions become integral to the project. But again, because of the way we work, it's all agreed that that is the case. No one can just take that information and use it. Participants should understand that the project process and artwork may be published on the in situ website and blog. So again, making people very clear from the outset that what they are doing, you know, because often it will be public funded, and as organisations we then have to represent the work that we do. So just making everybody aware that this is how we work and this is what will happen. They should understand that the project process, artwork and outcomes could be exhibited to a second audience. And a second audience is beyond those that were involved in the project. So a second audience is anybody visiting a website. A second audience is if that work is reproduced somewhere else, or if it goes on tour, then those are all to second audiences. And again, you know, the people involved in the project should be made aware of this. Engage, so those persons who are engaged, they should willingly engage and again not be coerced in any way. When engaged, they should understand that their views and opinions could be used as anonymous anecdotal information. Any personal information divulged during any conversations will be treated as strictly confidential and will not be repeated, recorded or used in any way. Anonymity will be guaranteed unless they choose otherwise and give written consent to their name being used in association with the project. Photographs or drawing where an individual is recognisable will not be used in either the production or promotion of any project unless the individual wishes to give consent. So that's in situ's code of ethics. Like I say, it's not static. It does change. They do revisit it and they do work on it again. And as a board member, I'm not involved in that process, but I get to, you know, it's presented to the board. So the board is always informed of what's going on with that.